I asked my best friend's mom which shirt to wear on a date. She held it against her chest, looked me dead in the eyes, and whispered, "I love you. Why don't you see?" I did not move. I did not speak. I just stood there like an idiot while the woman I had known for nearly a decade said the words out loud that, looking back, had probably been sitting in the room with us for years. But let me back up, because if I start there, you won't understand what made that moment so heavy. And the weight of it is the whole point. My name is Nolan Price. I am 34 years old. I work as an HVAC technician for a mid-sized contracting company in the suburbs just outside Charlotte, North Carolina. I drive a white work truck with a dent on the passenger side that I keep meaning to fix. I make decent money. I pay my bills on time. I own a used couch that I am genuinely proud of. My life is not complicated. At least it wasn't. I have been best friends with a guy named Caleb Stone since he was in his early 20s. We met at a pickup basketball game in a park near my old apartment. He talked more trash than anyone on the court and couldn't back up a single word of it, and for some reason that made me like him immediately. Caleb is 24 now, 10 years younger than me, which sounds strange until you spend 5 minutes with him and realize age means almost nothing when the friendship is real. We have different taste in music, different schedules, different ideas about what counts as a good Saturday. But when something goes wrong in either of our lives, the other one picks up on the second ring. That's the kind of friendship that doesn't need explanation. Caleb's mom is Elaine Park. She is 44 years old. She has worked as a physician's assistant at a busy outpatient clinic for going on 18 years. She is the kind of woman who remembers your coffee order, calls you out gently when you are making a bad decision, and never, not once in all the time I have known her, has asked for recognition in return. After Caleb's father left when Caleb was around 17, Elaine held the entire house together by herself. She paid the bills. She kept the lights on. She made sure Caleb stayed on track in school while working shifts that would have broken most people. I watched her do all of that, and I filed it away under the category of people I deeply respected from a distance. She was Caleb's mom. That was the whole story as far as I was concerned. I had been renting a small house on Fairfield Lane for about 2 years. Quiet street, big oak trees, neighbors who minded their business in a good way. Elaine lived directly across from me, which meant I saw her more than I probably would have otherwise. Borrowed her ladder once. Helped her drag a heavy box in from her car in the rain. Waved from driveways. Normal neighbor stuff. Normal friend's mom stuff. Nothing that made me stop and think twice. Then came that Saturday in October. I had a first date that evening with a woman named Tessa. We had met through a mutual friend at a rooftop gathering about 3 weeks earlier. Good conversation, easy back and forth, one of those rare interactions where you walk away thinking, okay, that was actually real. We had made plans for dinner downtown. I was genuinely looking forward to it. The only problem was that I had been staring at 2 shirts on my bed for 20 solid minutes and could not make a decision to save my life. One was a dark gray fitted crew neck. Clean. Simple. But maybe too simple. Like I had not tried at all. The other was a navy blue button-down. Sharp, but something about it felt stiff, like I was showing up to a job interview instead of a first date. I needed a second opinion from someone who actually had taste. Someone whose judgment I trusted without question. Elaine came to mind before I had finished the thought. A few months earlier, she had helped me pick a blazer for a work dinner. 2 different people stopped me that night to ask where I'd bought it. She had an eye for the kind of details most people walked straight past. I told myself it would take 5 minutes. Walk over, show her the shirts, get a verdict, walk back. Easy. Clean. Done. I grabbed both shirts and walked out my front door. And here is the part one think about now. The part that gets me. I stood at the edge of my driveway for almost a full minute before I crossed the street. Something in me hesitated and I had no idea why. I told myself I was just second-guessing whether it was too late to knock. It was barely past 7 in the evening. That wasn't it. Looking back now, I wonder if some part of me already knew. Not consciously. Not in a way I could have explained. But somewhere underneath everything, some quiet part of me understood that the next few minutes were not going to be what I thought they were. I crossed the street anyway. I climbed her front porch steps and knocked twice. She didn't answer right away. I stood there listening to the neighborhood sounds. Car rolling slowly past. Someone's wind chimes 2 houses down. Leaves moving. Then footsteps on the other side of the door. Soft and unhurried. When the door opened, Elaine looked the way she always did after a long day at the clinic. Not falling apart. Not disheveled. Just carrying that specific kind of tiredness that lives deep in the bones when your job asks more from you than it gives back. She had on a faded burgundy cardigan over a plain white shirt. Her dark hair was pulled back loosely, a few strands falling across her forehead. She was holding a mug of peppermint tea with both hands. She looked at me, then at the shirts on my arm. One corner of her mouth lifted. "Nolan," she said, "what are you doing here?" I held the shirts up a little. "First date tonight. I cannot figure out which one of these makes me look like a normal human being. You helped me with that blazer last spring and 2 people complimented it the same night. I need your opinion." She let out a short breath. Something between a laugh and a quiet sigh. She stepped back and let me in. Her house always had a way of feeling like somewhere someone actually lived. Not staged. Not overdone. Books on the side table. A candle burned down to almost nothing on the kitchen counter. Family photos on the wall going back years. Caleb in his middle school baseball uniform. Elaine younger, laughing at something off camera. It smelled like peppermint and faintly like the cedar soap she kept near the bathroom sink. I had been inside this house more times than I could count. It never felt strange. It always felt like exactly what it was. I draped both shirts over the back of the armchair near the window. Dark gray on the left, navy blue on the right. I stepped back and crossed my arms. "Honest opinion," I said. "No sparing my feelings." Elaine walked over slowly. She set her mug on the side table and stood in front of the chair, looking at each shirt carefully. She touched the fabric of the gray one first, rubbed it lightly between 2 fingers, then moved to the navy blue, then back to the gray again. She wasn't glancing. She was actually thinking, and I waited for the quick, confident answer I had come for. But she was quiet longer than usual. I shifted my weight. Almost made a joke about how 2 shirts couldn't possibly require this much analysis. But something in her face made me stop. She wasn't studying the shirts anymore. She was staring at the gray one, but her eyes had gone somewhere I couldn't follow. Somewhere far from that living room. "Elaine," I said. "Which one?" She picked up the gray shirt slowly, held it up in front of her, looked at it for a long beat. Then she looked at me directly, and her voice came out quieter than I had expected from her. "This one," she said. I smiled. "Good. That's the one I was leaning toward." "Why that one?" What she said next did not come out like an answer to a simple question. It came out like something that had been sitting behind a door for a very long time, and the door had finally, quietly, come open on its own. "Because it doesn't try too hard," she said. "You look like yourself in it." I laughed a little. That's exactly what I'm going for. I just want her to see I'm not putting on a show. Elaine did not laugh. She was still holding the shirt and her fingers had pressed into the fabric in a way that looked less like holding and more like gripping. The room felt different all at once. I couldn't point to anything specific. Nothing had moved. Nothing had changed. But the air had shifted in some way that I did not have words for yet and could not explain if I tried. I was about to say something. Anything to cut through the strange weight that had settled between us without asking permission. But before I could get there, Elaine looked up at me. Her eyes were wet, not crying, not tears running down her face. Just that full, glassy look that happens right before someone loses the battle they have been quietly fighting inside themselves for longer than anyone watching would ever guess. My smile faded before I knew it was going. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. And when the words finally came, they did not come out broken or desperate or dramatic. They came out the way the truth usually does when someone is done carrying it alone. Steady, almost calm, like saying it out loud was both the bravest and most terrifying thing she had ever done. "Nolan," she said, "why don't you see it?" One breath, then another. And then she said it again, clearer this time, like the first version had been practice and this was the real thing. "I love you." Everything inside me went completely still. My brain, which is usually pretty decent at producing something useful under pressure, gave me absolutely nothing. I stood there with a shirt in my hand and my mouth open and not a single coherent thought available to me. 10 seconds passed. Maybe more. I have no idea. And then Elaine's face changed. Whatever courage had carried those 3 words out of her seemed to dissolve the instant they landed. Her jaw tightened. Her eyes dropped to the floor. She turned away from me quickly, and in about 4 steps she was at the front door, pulling it open. Cool evening air poured in. Forget I said that, she told me. Her voice was thin and tight, like she was holding the rest of herself together through sheer force of will. Just go, please, Nolan. Just go. I walked toward the door. I stepped out onto the porch. I heard it close behind me, soft and final, like a period at the end of a sentence I hadn't finished reading yet. I stood on her front steps for a long moment. The street looked exactly the same. A neighbor walking a dog 2 houses down. A porch light flickering on across the way. Leaves scraping slowly along the sidewalk in the evening wind. The world had not paused. It had not noticed. It had kept going, completely indifferent to the fact that something inside me had just come loose from where it had been anchored. I walked home slowly. By the time I reached my own front door, my hands were not steady. I stood on my own porch in the dark for a while before I went inside. And for the first time in a long time, I had no idea what to do next. I did not go on the date that night. I took out my phone and called Tessa. She answered on the second ring, already on her way downtown. I told her I was sorry, that something had happened that I couldn't get around, and that she deserved a dinner partner who was actually present. She was gracious about it, said she understood. I felt terrible anyway. Some things you can't fake your way through, and sitting across from someone at a nice restaurant while Elaine Park's voice plays on a loop inside your head is definitely one of them. I canceled. I went inside. I dropped both shirts on the back of the kitchen chair and sat down on the couch in the quiet. And I stayed there for a long time, just thinking, which, if you know me, is not something I do easily or well. Here is what I kept coming back to. She had not blurted something out in a careless moment. I had replayed it enough times by then to know that. The way her fingers gripped that shirt. The way her eyes went somewhere else before she spoke. The way she said my name first, like she was steadying herself. That was not an accident. That was someone who had been holding something heavy for a long time and had finally, in one unguarded moment, let it slip. And I had walked out without a single word. I picked up my phone 3 times and put it back down. What do you text someone after that? Hey, sorry I stood there like a wall while you said something that clearly cost you a great deal. There is no version of that message that doesn't make things worse. So I put the phone face down on the counter, made myself eat something, and sat with the silence until it got late enough to justify going to bed. I did not sleep well. I lay in the dark listening to the occasional car pass outside and stared at the ceiling and thought about a woman I had known for years who had suddenly come into focus in a way I did not have a category for. Not different, just new. The way a song sounds different the 100th time you hear it because you finally listened to the actual words. I did not know what to do with that yet, but I could not unfeel it either. And that, right there, was the problem. 3 days of silence is longer than it sounds. When someone you talk to almost every week goes completely quiet, you feel the absence in small ways before you feel it all at once. You reach for your phone to send something dumb and then stop yourself. You pull into your driveway and glance across the street out of pure habit, expecting a light in the kitchen window, and find nothing. Just a still house that used to feel familiar and now feels like a closed door. By Tuesday morning, I was on a job site 2 towns over, replacing a corroded air handler in the ceiling of an older office building. Tight space, low clearance. The kind of work that demands your full attention because one wrong move and you are dealing with a refrigerant leak and a very unhappy building manager. My coworker Brock was below me managing the equipment. I was the one in the ceiling with the wrench and a flashlight clamped between my teeth. My phone buzzed in my chest pocket while I was mid-connection. I ignored it. It buzzed again. I shifted to check it, lost my grip on the fitting, and the whole thing came loose. Cold air blasted straight into my face and I nearly dropped the flashlight into the ceiling cavity. Brock's voice came up from below. You good up there? Yeah, I said. Lost focus. He did not push it. He handed me a new fitting when I came down and went back to work without a word. I was grateful for that. The messages were from Caleb, nothing important, just something about a concert he wanted to go to next month. Completely normal. But for the half second when I felt that buzz, my stomach had done something I was not prepared for. And that reaction told me more than I wanted to admit. That night I sent Elaine a message. Kept it short. Just 5 words. Wanted to make sure you're okay. 1 check mark appeared. Not 2. She had not opened it. I put the phone face down on the kitchen counter and ate dinner standing up because sitting down felt like too much stillness. Scrambled eggs because I had not gone to the grocery store since before any of this happened. I stood at my kitchen counter alone and ate and stared at the wall and tried very hard not to think about the fact that 3 months ago I would have knocked on her door and asked if she felt like splitting whatever she had on the stove. That door felt very far away. Wednesday came and went without a word. Thursday, I drove past a small bakery on my way home from a job in the next neighborhood over and remembered, without meaning to, that Elaine had a thing for almond croissants. I only knew that because Caleb and I had stopped there one afternoon 2 summers ago after helping her move a heavy bookshelf, and she had ordered 2 without hesitation and said she did not believe in sharing pastries. It had made me laugh at the time. It made me pull into the parking lot now. I went inside. I bought 2, wrapped in white paper. I drove to her street and parked. I walked up to her front door quietly, and then I stood there. The door was right in front of me. All I had to do was knock. But my hand didn't move, because I had no idea what I would say if the door opened. I was not ready for that conversation yet. I did not have the words for it. So instead I set the bag down gently on her welcome mat, turned around, and walked back to my car. I sat at the end of the block with the engine off. Waited. About 12 minutes later, her porch light clicked on. The front door opened just far enough for a hand to reach out and take the bag from the mat. Then the light went off again. No message came through. No knock at my door later that night. Nothing. But she had taken it. And that one small thing, a hand reaching out in the dark for a paper bag on a doorstep, was somehow enough to carry me through another 24 hours. Friday was harder. I worked a full day, came home, and sat in a house that felt too quiet in a way that had nothing to do with noise. I thought about calling Caleb, but that opened up a conversation I was absolutely not ready to have. Caleb did not know anything had happened. As far as he knew, life had continued at its normal pace. Life had not continued at its normal pace. I went to bed early, lay in the dark again, and this time, instead of spinning in circles, something in my thinking got very quiet and very clear. She hadn't said it carelessly. She had been holding that for a long time. I knew that now, in a way, I hadn't been able to see the night it happened. And the longer I sat with that truth, the heavier it became. Not in a suffocating way. In the way that something real feels when you finally stop running from it and just let it be what it is. By Saturday evening, something in me had settled into a decision without me consciously making it. I could keep giving her space. I could keep leaving things on her doorstep and waiting for some sign that told me what to do next. Or I could stop hiding behind the silence and actually show up. Not with a plan. Not with a speech. Just honestly. The way I would want someone to show up for me. I got up from the couch. I walked out my front door. I crossed the street in the cooling evening air without giving myself time to think my way out of it. I walked up to her door and knocked before my brain had a chance to weigh in. The street was quiet around me. Leaves settling on the sidewalk. A dog barking somewhere down the block. Car moving slowly past. Then, from inside the house, footsteps. Slow. Like she was deciding whether to answer at all. Long enough that I started thinking maybe she was going to let me stand there all night. Honestly, I would have deserved it. But then the sound of a hand on the lock. And the door opened. Elaine looked like someone who had spent a week being very careful not to fall apart. Not broken, but holding. The way a person looks when they have been keeping themselves upright through sheer quiet determination, and the effort of it is starting to show in small ways. Her shoulders were lower than usual. Her face was pale. She had on a soft gray sweater over a plain dark shirt and her hair was down, which I almost never saw. She looked at me the way someone looks at something they want but have already told themselves they cannot have. She said my name. Just my name. Nothing attached to it. I said, "Can I come in for a few minutes? I'm not here to make anything harder. I just need to talk to you." She stood in the doorway for a moment that felt much longer than it was. Then she stepped aside, and I walked back into that house carrying everything I had been thinking about for 5 days, finally ready to say it out loud. The inside felt different that night. I knew that living room well. I knew which floorboard creaked near the hallway, and which lamp threw the warmest light, and how the kitchen smelled in the evening when she had been cooking. But that night none of it felt warm. There was a cold cup of tea on the coffee table. A blanket bunched up at one end of the couch like she had been lying there alone watching nothing. The house was completely silent in a way that told me everything about the week she had just lived through inside these walls. We sat down on the couch. Not close. A full cushion of space between us. Felt like a lot more than that. Neither of us spoke for a moment. Then Elaine looked down at her hands and started talking. She said she never should have said it. She said she had replayed that moment more times than she could count, and every single time she wished she could reach back into the air and pull those words out before they landed. She said she saw my face the moment they did. The shock on it. The way I went completely still. And she knew right then she had taken something comfortable and turned it into something complicated. She apologized. Caught herself. Apologized again before I could respond. I let her finish. I did not interrupt. When she finally went quiet, I said, "Elaine, stop apologizing." She looked up at me. "You didn't ruin anything," I told her. "You scared me. That's different." She shook her head slowly like she did not quite believe that. So I kept talking. I told her the week had felt wrong in a way I couldn't put down. Not sad exactly. More like something familiar had been quietly removed and I kept reaching for it and finding empty space. I told her that every time I tried to move forward with my day, something small would pull me back. The bakery near her street. A baseball game on someone's TV through an open window. The way her porch light looked from my driveway at night. I told her I had been keeping her inside a version of our relationship that made sense on paper, and I had been doing it for so long that I had stopped asking myself whether it was actually still true. Elaine was very still while I talked. She was not looking at her hands anymore. She was watching my face carefully, like she was trying to figure out if I actually meant what I was saying or if I was just trying to be kind. "I want to be clear about something," I said. "I am not here because I feel sorry for you. I am not here to make you feel better about what you said. I am here because I missed you, and because I think I have been looking at you a certain way for a long time without letting myself ask why." The room stayed quiet for a moment after that. Then she told me something I had not expected. She said it had not started recently. She said it had crept up on her slowly over years, and she had gotten very good at folding it down and pressing it flat. Telling herself it was just fondness. Just the comfort of someone familiar. But every time I came through her front door, she said, it got a little harder to keep believing her own story. She looked at me and said quietly, "I kept waiting for it to go away." A pause. It never did. I did not know what to say to that right away. So I said the only thing I actually knew to be true in that moment. "I don't want to lose you," I told her. "Not the way things were. And maybe not just that either. But I am not going to promise you something I haven't fully sorted out yet because you deserve better than a half-built answer." Her eyes filled. She didn't let the tears fall. She just sat with them, blinking slowly. "I'm older than you," she said. Almost like she was reminding herself more than me. "I know that," I said. "Caleb is your best friend. I know that too. This is not a simple situation, Nolan." "No," I said. "But I don't think simple is what either of us actually needs right now." She looked at me for a long time after that. The kind of look that is doing a lot of quiet work underneath the surface. Then, slowly, like watching something unfold in real time, she nodded. "Slow," she said. Not a question. A condition she was offering carefully with both hands. "Slow," I said back. "No pressure. Just honest." She let out a breath that sounded like it had been sitting in her chest for the better part of a week. We did not hug. We did not close the distance on the couch. But when I stood up to leave, she walked me to the door. And before I stepped outside, she said, Thank you for coming back. I turned around and looked at her standing in the doorway. That gray sweater. Eyes still a little glassy but steadier now. More like herself. I meant every word, I told her. Then I walked back across the street in the cool night air and went inside my house and sat down in the dark without turning on a single light. And I did not feel confused. I did not feel nervous. I felt something much quieter than both of those things. Something that felt like the very beginning of something real. It started with a text message on a Wednesday night, just past 9. While I was heating up leftovers and half watching something I had already seen twice on television. My phone lit up on the counter. Her name on the screen. Made way too much chicken soup tonight. Doors unlocked if you want some. I stared at that message for about 10 seconds. Then I turned off the stove, put on my shoes, and walked across the street. When I came in, Elaine was already in the kitchen, standing at the counter, ladling soup into 2 bowls like it was the most ordinary thing in the world. She didn't make it strange. She handed me a bowl, nodded toward the table, and said sit, like I was just Nolan again. Like the weight of the last 2 weeks had been folded up and set quietly in a corner for now. We ate and we talked. She told me about a patient that day, an elderly man who absolutely refused to follow any of his care instructions but somehow managed to make every person on the floor laugh before noon. I told her about a job site where the previous technician had installed the entire duct system in reverse and it had taken my whole crew half a day to figure out why nothing was working the way it should. She laughed at that. A real one. The kind that reached her eyes and stayed there for a second after the sound faded. Felt normal. Felt like us. But underneath it, something was different now. Not tense. Not forced. Just present, like a piece of furniture that had been rearranged in a familiar room. You keep noticing it. And every time you do, you feel glad it is there. After dinner, we moved to the couch. Some old film came on the television, the quiet kind where not much happens on the surface but you can't look away because every scene feels like it means something. Elaine tucked her feet under her and wrapped both hands around a fresh mug of tea. I sat close enough that there were a few inches between our arms. Halfway through the film, without a word, she shifted slightly and rested her head on my shoulder. She did not ask if it was all right. She did not make a comment about it or turn it into a moment. She just did it, like it was the most natural thing. And maybe that was exactly what it was. I stayed still. I did not say anything either. I just let it happen. And the quiet that came with it felt full rather than empty, which is a different thing entirely. Small things started building after that night. She texted more. A photo of a lemon cake she had tried making on her day off, slightly lopsided but clearly delicious. A complaint about the parking situation near the clinic. A question about whether the big oak on the corner of our street had always leaned that far to the left or if she had only just started noticing it. Easy things. Ordinary things. The kind of messages that are not actually about what they appear to be about, because what they are really saying is I was going about my day and you crossed my mind and I wanted you to know. I started leaving her porch light on the nights she had late shifts. She told me she noticed the first time. She did not say much about it. Just sent back a single word. Thanks. But the next morning there was a brown paper bag on my doormat. 2 biscuits inside, still warm. A sticky note attached in her handwriting that said don't skip breakfast. I put that note in my jacket pocket without thinking about it. It stayed there for 2 weeks before I found it again doing laundry. About 3 weeks into all of this, Caleb called me. My stomach did something when I saw his name on the screen, but I answered on the second ring. He did not ease into it. He asked me straight. He said, I need you to be honest with me. Is something going on between you and my mom? I did not lie. I did not soften the edges. I told him the truth in the same plain way I had told Elaine. That something had shifted. That it was slow and careful and I had come to him because he deserved to hear it from me and not from anyone else. The silence on the other end of the line lasted long enough to make my palm go damp against the phone. Then Caleb said, I've watched you show up for her for years. Fix things around that house without being asked. Check in when I was too busy to. Treated her with more real respect than most people ever have. It would be pretty hard for me to stand here and tell you that means nothing. I let out a breath. But then his voice shifted. Went quieter. If you hurt her, he said, we are done. No middle ground on that. Understood, I told him. That is not what I am here to do. He was quiet for another moment. Then he said, she has smiled more in the last few weeks than I have seen in a long time. I noticed. I just did not know what was behind it until right now. We hung up after that. I sat with that conversation for a long time. The trust it takes to say what Caleb said, to be that honest about something that complicated, that is not a small thing. And it meant something to me that he gave it. The night that made everything fully real came about a week later. My phone buzzed just past midnight. I was already in bed, not sleeping, just lying in the dark the way I had gotten used to doing lately. Elaine's name on the screen. The message was short. She said she had lost a patient that evening. An older woman she had cared for over several months. She said she did not want to sit alone in the house with it tonight. I was in my car before I had finished reading the message. When I got there, she was already curled up on one end of the couch, knees pulled up, a blanket over her legs. The lamp in the corner turned down low. She looked hollowed out in the particular way that grief hollows a person when the loss is not a surprise and still hits like one.
He sat beside her.
I did not try to fill the air with something useful. I did not tell her the patient was at peace or that she had done everything right. I had learned enough about Elaine by then to know she did not need to be talked out of her grief. She needed someone to sit inside it with her without flinching. After a while she leaned into me. I put my arm around her. She pressed her face against my shoulder and cried. Quiet and deep. The way people cry when they have been holding it in since the moment it happened, and only now, with someone they trust sitting right beside them, does the body finally decide it is safe to let go. I held her, one hand on her back, steady, not rushing her toward feeling better, just present, just there. When the worst of it passed, she lifted her head and looked at me. Her eyes were swollen. Her face was completely open.
No composure.
No careful distance. Just her, the real version, without any of the walls she was so good at keeping politely in place. She said, I keep waiting to find a reason this does not make sense. I said, did you find one? She thought about it. Actually sat with the question the way she did everything, honestly, without rushing to a comfortable answer. Then she shook her head. No, she said quietly. I did not. I reached up and brushed a strand of hair away from her face. She did not pull back. She leaned into it slightly, like even that small thing was something she had been patiently waiting to let herself have. Then stop waiting, I told her. She held my gaze for a long moment. Then slowly, the way someone nods when they are making a real decision and not just agreeing to end a conversation, she nodded. That night she fell asleep on my shoulder before the lamp in the corner dimmed all the way down. I stayed until the sky outside the window started shifting from black to the deep, quiet blue that comes just before morning. When I finally drove home, the neighborhood was completely still. No one on the streets. No lights on in any of the houses. Just me and the early morning dark and something sitting in my chest that felt nothing like confusion and everything like certainty. Some things do not announce themselves with noise. They do not arrive with a big moment or a clear turning point you can circle on a calendar. They just settle in, slow and sure, like they were always headed here and were simply waiting for you to stop moving long enough to notice. I pulled into my driveway and sat in the car for a moment. Looked across the street at her house. Her porch light was still on. The one I had started leaving on for her. I smiled, went inside, and for the first time in weeks, I slept like someone who knew exactly where he stood. If this story stayed with you even a little, hit subscribe. There are more stories like this one coming, and you do not want to miss them. And drop a comment below. Tell me where in the world you are listening to this right now. I genuinely want to know. See you in the next one.